Today we're going to be analyzing how effective are play-based interventions compared to traditional ABA therapy techniques. Hi, I'm Michaela Meyer, and this is for Psychology of Play at Metropolitan State University of Denver. As a registered behavioral therapist working with young children between the ages of 1.5 to 6 years old using the Early Start Denver model, I've seen how naturalistic play-based approaches foster emotional regulation, motivation, and social engagement. Play-based interventions are more likely to follow compassionate, trauma-informed care that supports children's and families through meaningful, developmentally appropriate interactions. Understanding how play-based therapy compares to traditional applied behavioral analysis techniques will strengthen my clinical practice and ensure interventions are both effective and empathetic when working with clients. So what's our research goal? The research goal is to compare the effectiveness of traditional ABA versus play-based therapy for improving behavioral and social outcomes in children with autism spectrum disorder. You may be asking, what is autism? Autism is impairance in social reciprocity and communication. Autism impacts emotional exchange, nonverbal, verbal communication, and behavior patterns. Early signs can be low responsiveness, poor use of gestures, and minimal eye contact. Children with autism tend to have stereotyped and repetitive behaviors. For example, it might be mouthing or stimming, like rocking back and forth, or maybe just getting attached to the same motion with a toy, or like a repetitive aspect of a game and getting like stuck on that one fixation of it. It typically occurs in early childhood, and often most children with autism also experience intellectual disabilities. 1 in 160 children are diagnosed. Autism rates are rising, and the disorder significantly impacts brain development, self-control, social communication, and it is very crucial that we find the most effective intervention and that interventions occur early. Difficulties with verbal, pre-verbal, and nonverbal communications with challenges in play and symbolic behavior are key signals of autism. So autism is a wide spectrum, and I have worked with 2-year-olds that have a conversation with me like a 7-year-old would, and I've had 5, 6-year-olds who speak 1 to 2 word sentences or utterances too. So it is a very wide spectrum. What is applied behavioral analysis? Well, ABA was developed by Dr. Iver Leves, and it focuses on improving specific behaviors that are important for daily living, communication, and social interaction. One core method used is discrete trial training. These skills are taught in small and structured steps. It would look like a clinician presenting a discriminative stimulus. This would be like the cue. For example, it could be look, and putting in an object. So the discriminative stimulus would be like the clinician going, look, wow, and then presenting the object. The client would then respond by either orienting itself toward the object or looking, just doing whatever they were doing before. That would be the response. And then the reinforcer or reward is given if the response is correct. So that could look like, oh, playing with the bubble or the toy or whatever was preferred here, or good luck, or just exasperating that playful response. If we're talking in play-based ABA. But in this case, a reinforcer with traditional ABA is more likely to be like a candy or a good looking, or more like you would see training. So you're using positive reinforcement to hope that the behavior will occur more in the future. This process is also commonly described as the antecedent behavior and the consequence, a basic foundation of behavioral learning. Through these methods, applied behavioral analysis helps build critical skills like compliance, imitation, and making eye contact, which are all very important for social interactions. According to Yuwano of 2009, the issue of autism in children began to gain attention in Indonesia around the 1990s, with awareness increasing significantly in the 2000s. While exact data on the prevalence of autism is unclear, the number of diagnoses has very much so risen. So Dr. Susie Yozandui, a psychiatrist specializing in emotional disorders in children and adolescents in Jakarta, shared an interview that before the 1990s, only about 5 children per year were diagnosed with autism. However, in recent years, up to 3 new cases can be diagnosed in a single day, indicating a rise in autism. The aim of the study was to evaluate the effectiveness of the applied behavioral analysis therapy model in improving language skills in children with autism, as well to assess their language development after receiving this ABA therapy. The results show that applied behavioral analysis therapy is very effective in improving language skills in children with autism, and the study found that children initially required several lessons to learn a new vocabulary word. And after implementing the ABA method, these children were able to learn the same vocabulary in just a couple of lessons with significant improvement in language skills. This therapy involves structured opportunities for learning, skill practice, positive reinforcement, and no reinforcement for harmful behaviors. It can be applied in a variety of contexts, increasing generalization like classrooms, at home, family time, and etc. So results from a study done by Roma Bogar demonstrated that applied behavioral analysis therapy was particularly effective in enhancing language development and handling behavioral challenges. In Europe and UK, some studies show that applied behavioral analysis can improve long-term outcomes. This looks like greater independence, integration, autonomy, identity, communication skills. Its overall effectiveness is difficult to measure, though, due to certain negative assumptions, biases about applied behavioral analysis, the lack of consistent application across diverse settings, insufficient government support and accessibility, privatization making services expensive and less available. Although applied behavioral analysis is recognized in developed countries for reducing social communication deficits in autism, it faces several issues resulting with acceptance, understanding, and availability. In certain developing countries, like India and Pakistan, it is considered effective in reducing autism symptoms and improving skills. High cost, lack of resources, and low awareness make it highly inaccessible. And parent-mediated and more child-centered developmental approaches like DIR and floor time have become excessively popular and effective due to lower cost and a greater cultural fit in these communities, which are much more collective and at home than us individualistic Americans. Applied behavioral analysis is harder to implement because it requires expert training and cannot easily be parent-led. So overall, it's important to note that applied behavioral analysis is widely known and can be effective both in developed and developing countries. Cost, access, and cultural challenges limits its reach and open the door for alternative and accessible interventions. Let's take a look at play-focused applied behavioral analysis models. Play is a natural context for young children, and play-based interventions are often used to support foundational skills like attention, engagement, and early learning in children with autism. Studies by Wilson and Solomon found that while these approaches don't always lead to major improvements in social communication or language, they do improve parent-child relationships and reduce caregiver stress, which are critical components of effective intervention. Even if language gains are limited, play still contributes to overall development, making it a valuable tool to more structured therapies like traditional applied behavioral analysis. You will see a lot more intrinsic motivation and natural learning opportunities occur. So we're going to evaluate one of the early start Denver models. It's a play-based form ABA, it's twist. So this is a different model of ABA. There's several different types. We're going to look at the early start Denver model for toddlers with autism spectrum disorder, or young children, I should say. So studies have shown that the early start Denver model significantly improves cognitive skills abilities, and children had an average IQ increase of 17.6 points. This is more than double the increase observed in other groups. Additionally, ESDM groups' adaptive behavior matched the growth rates of typically developing children. So this enhanced adaptive behavior. While the comparison groups experience delays, it reflects the ESDM's effectiveness in real-world skills and development. This might come because of the intrinsic motivation. They prefer to use least to most prompting compared to traditional ABA uses most to least. Least to most increases child independence and autonomy. Additionally, they've found that autism diagnosis has changed. So they've noticed that children in the ESDM group saw a reduction in severity of their autism diagnosis. So there's a large scale here, spectrum, and they've seen that children who are in the SDM group might move from severe to moderate or moderate to mild, which is huge and is really increasing success for these little ones and their future well into adulthood. Children between young children, infants, and toddlers, they are building over 1 million new neuronal connections per second. So this also leads into the importance of a comprehensive parental involved approach. This really is important for the combination of developmental and behavioral principles in ESDM. It's delivered through both therapists and parents, and it ensures a consistent and holistic approach over the intervention period. And this is really helpful because it allows the work and tools that are helping the child learn and grow in the center to also take those skills home. So early intervention is huge. The impact is so important. The study stresses the need for support of early intervention, demonstrating that starting treatment before 2.5 years old can have a profound impact on child's development and their future. Additionally, we can look at some additional observations that was made here. I took some look at a traditional ABA session where there was not much play utilized, if any at all. Pretty much none at all. And then also I analyzed some videos and observation and play-based ABA observations. I will also talk about some of my experiences as I go through this. So one of the observation areas I was looking at was child engagement, and in traditional ABA observations, children were often disengaged. This would look like looking away, wandering away, staring off blankly, and oftentimes when they were engaged with eye contact, it was often reinforced with candy or a high five. In comparison, play-based ABA observations, children were highly engaged through natural play activities such as popcorn game, building sandwich. This could look like grocery shopping, carts, playing with cars, maybe a ball and hammer, and it could even be sensory social routines like peekaboo or tag or hide and seek. We see that also the child smiled and maintained attention and showed enthusiasm, and this was often intrinsic. And behaviors were reinforced through natural reinforcers, rather that be bubbles or through having the next step of the toy complete or having this excitement that, oh, yay, we made the sandwich, or having it reinforced they ask for a piece of the popcorn or to put popcorn in there or a bowl. You reinforce their request by giving them the preferred item. Also, child initiations in traditional ABA observations were rare. Clinician prompted almost all behaviors. In comparison, in play-based ABA observations, the child initiated labeling after just some modeling. Like the clinician would model like, oh, what do we need? Pop, pop. And the kid would finish off, I need popcorn. And that eventually led to the child independently initiating that labeling and requesting through intrinsic motivation through play. In traditional ABA, reinforcers used were candy, praise, and structured tangible rewards, while in play-based ABA, there was verbal praise, playful reinforcement, such as building activities and fun verbal exchanges. Maybe this might even be like using reinforcer toys such as bubbles or wound-up toys, or reinforcing with a smile and a yay, or a yes, good job, or rewarding them with something you know they prefer. So taking a look at the therapist adjustments, traditional ABA observations used immediate prompts and reinforcements that were very structured. And one you could see that they were asking the request for cookie. They were breaking up cookie. I want cook. Kids say cookie, cookie, give piece cookie, then whole cookie, say the whole cookie once they independently say the whole cookie alone. So that reinforcement was structured, it was the cookie. Breaking up step by step, and once they said the whole word independently, rewarding them with the whole cookie. There was also clear step-by-step corrections if there was struggle. While with play-based ABA observation, there was a lot more flexibility of prompting, there was also adjustment to activities to maintain child's interest. For example, if one child struggles with object play and is having a hard time sitting still and staying focused, you might modulate that energy by engaging in a sensory social routine for a few minutes, and that might involve like playing around with that kid for a second, figuring out what's engaging them. Might not be peekaboo that day, it might be picking them up and down, and one day it might not be picking up and down, it might be hiding behind the cabinet and going, oh, where are you? Oh, there you are, got you, and making those really playful sounds. And then going back to that object play, and you might modulate that energy more and keeping them engaged just a bit longer. Additional observations I made were around frustration and compliance. In traditional ABA, there was higher frustration observed when there was forced eye contact or structured demands were placed. While in play-based ABA observation, we saw lower frustration. Children remained cooperative longer during playful sessions. Kind of like I was talking, there's more of that modulation of energy, that flexibility, intrinsic motivation, preferred object, and child-led activities too. The child was deciding like, oh, well, I want to do this with this item, and then the adult would follow and find a learning opportunity that they could get creative into introducing into that play activity. Traditional ABA observations in response to prompts and reinforcement responded after consistent structured reinforcement, and it was dependent on external rewards. While on the other hand, in play-based, they responded more independently, and again, coming back, there was that intrinsic motivation. In the generalization of skills, we could see that in traditional ABA, skills were practiced in a very specific and often isolated situation, like look at me, while in play-based situations, they were generalized into a variety of situations and play situations. Due to the adaptability and symbolic nature of play, it allows for children to pretend to shop, pretend to color or write, or to be vet, or all of the different settings that they can generalize that in, rather that be in a group or in playground or in centaurs or with another peer in a shared room or individually one-on-one. It's just in a variety of different situations and contexts, and since the learning opportunities are more naturalistic, they can come up in daily living activities such as eating, going to the bathroom, etc. In traditional ABA observations, the session structure was highly structured, specific trials, limited flexibility, and there was a strict transition between tasks. While in play-based, it was much more child-led, and the therapist followed the child's interests while embedding learning moments into those interests, which really did increase engagement. So what are the implications of this information? How can we apply it? Play-based ABA integrates therapy into daily life. It enhances motivation, engagement, social reciprocity, skill building, and merging the two could help clinicians create more individualized, developmentally appropriate, and trauma-informed interventions. Parent-led training programs, research, especially the ASTM studies, emphasize how effective parent involvement is. Creating structured training to help families use play-based strategies daily could improve outcomes and reduce stress in home environments, therefore improving the outcome for the whole family. There is an increased need for more research on the overall impacts of both of these therapies, and to know that play-based therapies really increase that connection, engagement, and rapport. The child feels like they are accepted and playing and having fun. They don't feel like they're there in therapy because they need to be, or they're disabled. They're being seen for their strengths, and their strengths are being acknowledged, and their challenges are being challenged as they grow. Future directions for understanding the effectiveness and comparison for traditional ABA and play-based ABA would need to conduct more long-term studies comparing the outcomes of the developmental outcomes for children. There's also a need to develop hybrid intervention models, blending naturalistic play with also structured skill acquisition and emotional regulation. There should also be an expanded trauma-informed play-based care, rather that be in traditional ABA, especially in traditional ABA needs more trauma-informed play-based care, and that comes back to seeing more of like a little hybrid there. Um, it also stresses the need for the involvement of siblings and families in therapy, and this also is because research shows that this strengthens the generalization of skills and that overall supports the success of the family. Also, increased access to early developmental appropriate interventions for undeserved children with ASD is critical. So we need to increase accessibility in both developing and developed countries for children with ASD. So what can we take away? Play-based interventions foster motivation, engagement, and generalization in skills. Traditional ABA is effective for teaching specific skills, and it may benefit from more naturalistic approach, engagement, and intrinsic motivation, more child-centered play or focused, having a little bit more of that shared control. Also knowing that blended structured ABA with compassionate play-based methods can better support developmental needs in young children with autism spectrum disorder, and that they both show promise for language and skill development, while traditional ABA did show more language development, keeping in mind that play-based ABA therapy works with an interdisciplinary team like speech language pathologists and OTs to best support that whole rounded care of children. They might even contract with music therapists, art therapists, etc. And more research is really needed to know the long-term outcomes of each approach. And here's my references. Thanks for listening. I hope you learned a lot.